fuck, shit, fuck. Okay. Cooler bot. We're not going to make it back to the ship before Epsilon station explodes. You need to detach and reach minimum safe distance.
No sweat, Boba Fett.
Okay. All right. He doesn't seem too concerned about us.
Honestly, I'm not surprised. Yeah. But, all right, I gotta say, it looks like we dodged that weird, messed up alien, and we found the executive pods, which is a plus for us.
Yes, sweet.
We should be able to launch safely if I can guess the password.
Shit, you gotta guess the password? That's gonna take forever.
Got it.
Oh, wow. What was the password?
I love money 69, all caps, no spaces, baby. Looks like this thing is programmed to take us to the nearest inhabited colony, it looks like.
Coolerbot, are you clear?
Yes, 2-0.
Great, we're launching now. Set a course for Eurydice. Welcome to Crew Expendable. I am Organic Hallstrom.
And I am anti-corporate UA extremist Rohrbacher.
And we're just a couple of Prometheus's fires burning our way through the alien universe.
I knew you were going to have something to say about that.
We're just a couple of fires, you and me.
Sure.
Yeah. Kenny, we're here to knock off the rest of the Alien Bloodlines issues 4 through 6. But before we jump into that, let's do some shout outs.
All right. Yeah. All right.
First, shout out to Jack. Jack emailed us nice email about how they're enjoying the show. And it's always great to hear when people are digging what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, time zones are a bitch, but we are going to connect and play some Fire Team together here soon. I'll try to drag Kenny into it also. Jack's in Australia, I think. We're going to have to get up early.
Yep, he's in Australia, baby.
Yeah. Also want to shout out a couple people from our YouTube page, Mighty Badger and November Rains. You guys are dropping a lot of comments on our videos. Thanks for checking the show out. Again, always great to hear from the listeners.
For sure.
We're not always great about like responding to YouTube comments, but I try, I try.
That's right.
And finally, a little bit of business, Kenny. We had a discussion on the last episode about whether or not face huggers leave marks.
Yep, we sure did.
YouTube username Hall of Famer LustRazor44 did comment on our YouTube episode for Bloodlines issues 1 through 3 that the dog in Alien 3 has face marks from the face hugger. I knew I had seen it somewhere.
All right. Now, okay, on one hand,
yeah,
that's fair.
It's fair.
On the other hand, how should I phrase this? I'd like to go to my own defense about this, because there is a reasonable explanation for this.
No one's no one's calling us out for this, right? I do think Aaron Percival from AVP Galaxy also mentioned that on our Twitter page. Shout out as always to Aaron and AVP Galaxy, but no one's mad at us.
You're right, but I do feel that this is something that, given the proper context, will make my comments make more sense.
Sure.
I mentioned in the last episode that this comic was the first time I had ever seen, facehugger marks on somebody. As we've discussed, that was, as we just mentioned, that was mentioned in the last episode.
Right.
And here's the thing.
Yes.
I don't want to say long-time listeners, but listeners of the show of previous episodes, and specifically a very specific previous episode, our Alien 3 episode, will remember that in that episode, I said that when I watched Alien 3 for that episode, because we did the theatrical cut of Alien 3. I said on that episode, that was the first time I had ever watched the theatrical cut of Alien 3.
Yeah.
Every single time up until then I had watched the movie, it had been the assembly cut, which does not have the dog in it.
Right.
So when I said in the last Bloodlines episode that this comic was the first time I'd saw those marks, it was because the version of Alien 3 that had those marks, I didn't see until after I had already read this comic.
After you read this, the original time you read it the first time.
Yes.
That's fair. And in my defense, I mean, I knew I had seen it somewhere. I didn't pinpoint Spike from Alien 3. But I also, on our Alien 3 episode, with which we did with Josh from Kombat Time, go check that one out. It's a good time. I do admit that I've been sleeping on Alien 3. And most of the watching that I had done of it was, I think, the assembly cut.
Sure.
So it's not, I just don't know the movie. I don't have the details memorized in my head, right? But I knew I had seen it somewhere. Additionally, Aaron Percival, again, from avpgalaxy.net, does mention Alien 3's theatrical cut has it with Spike, and to some degree it shows up again, the idea of face scarring from a face hugger in Alien Echo, but it is not as drastic.
And as the only person here on this show that, as of this recording, has read Alien Echo, I do not remember that detail being in the book.
No problem. Again,
I have read it, but like, for all the people out there listening that are not aware of that book, let me tell you right now, there is a lot going on in that book. And so that is a detail that I simply do not remember and did not notice.
Sure.
That's all.
We're going to get things wrong. That's just the nature of the show.
Oh, I'm like, I don't want to say I'm famous for getting stuff wrong, but I personally like to think that one of my personal brands on this show is seeing something and then giving my opinion about it, and then like 40 seconds later, that opinion being proven way wrong. I do that like twice an episode. It's fine.
It happened. That has happened on rare occasion. But I love it when we want to know, we want to learn these things. We get something wrong, we want to know, and we want to set the record straight about it. So thank you again, both Aaron and LustRazor44 for mentioning dog, for mentioning the dog in Alien 3. Again, if you any other corrections, and again, be cool about it, right? Like, that's the thing. Don't be like, hey, assholes, you dipshits forgot about the dog in Alien 3. Like, don't do that, Like, be cool about it. Our social media is open. DMs are open. What's our email, Kenny?
Our email is mother@crewexpendable.net.
Yeah, it is. And what's your personal email if people want to correct you directly?
It's mother@crewexpendable.net.
There you go. And you can reach me directly at mother@crewexpendable.net as well.
Also, as a very brief side note, it may have been the YouTube comment that you sent me, or maybe it was somebody on Twitter that mentioned it. I don't exactly remember where I saw it, but somebody was like, oh yeah, regarding the marks on, the face hugger marks on people's faces, you can definitely see those marks on Spike. And like, that was like the entire comment. And I was sitting there going, who the fuck is Spike?
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't even like it took me a while to remember. I literally didn't remember until I got onto Google and typed in Spike Alien 3. And it took me to the Wikipedia article for the dog. And I went, shit, that's right. They did name the dog in that movie. I totally forgot.
Because like Spike's a generic dog name, I think. But like, but Alien 3 is a movie where you could absolutely see someone being named Spike.
Yeah, not only would it make sense for a person to be named Spike in that movie, but also it's in like the novelization or the comic book, or there's some like version of the story, some adaptation of it, where the dog's name isn't Spike. Like, they changed the name of the dog in that adaptation, and so he's like, yeah, the facehugger marks are on Spike, and I was like, who the fuck is Spike?
Which of the bald white dudes is Spike again?
before we move on and get
Yeah.
to the main event, because I didn't really have anything else to say.
Oh, I got a little something, but
Okay, then go ahead. Then go ahead.
I'd like
Go
to
ahead
touch
then.
on briefly. But is this related to what we've already been talking about? What you were going to say?
No.
Okay, yeah, this is just a straight up, Kenny. I just want to say to you again that I'm playing Starfield, baby.
Well, someone's got to, because I'm sure not.
Yeah, you're not. Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to.
That is correct. I do not. But here's the thing. If I did, I still wouldn't. And on top of that, I might, because I do have a Steam Deck and it might be playable on a Steam Deck.
Okay. Fair.
I don't know. It might be, it might not be, but I'm not like completely barred from it.
Sure.
I do have one theoretical access point to it. That's
Okay.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, you technically have two because you've still got an Xbox One, right?
I do. That is correct.
Now, there's not an Xbox One version of the game, but if you have Game Pass on your Xbox One, you can stream the Series X version to your Xbox One. It's kind of wild.
Well, I don't have Game Pass.
It's a pure. Well, I got a 1 month trial. I'll hook you up.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. Listen, I'm not as far as Bethesda games go, like the Bethesda games that I have played recently have been like the Doom games, right? Not like the proper Bethesda role playing games, not your Skyrims, and I've never played an Elder Scrolls game at all, or a Fallout game.
I have done both of those. I played, what was the one for the Xbox?
Oblivion,
Morrowind,
the original Xbox.
Yep. I was over, because I never owned an original Xbox. I was over at my friend's house. I can't call it an Xbox One, so it's an original
Sure,
Xbox.
the OG.
I was over at my friend's house who had it, and I started up a file, made my character and all that.
Right.
And I if memory serves, because this was, I don't know, 15 years ago that this happened. So
Yeah.
I might be remembering it wrong. But I think once you start the game and create your character, the next thing that happens is that like a door opens up like inside of a village. And then you like walk out of the building into the village proper. And then that's how the game starts.
Okay.
And I walked out of the door into the village and I spent, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes running around the village, just like figuring out the lay of the land, trying to figure out where everything was.
Sure.
And in that less than 5 minutes, I got like 9 different quests.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't know about you, but I believe I've mentioned on the show before that I have really bad choice paralysis.
Yeah, I'm not sure you mentioned this, but I have this too.
And so, yeah, I started playing the game and I immediately was given like a dozen different things to do. And I was like, I don't know which one to do. I don't know where to go. And I just turned the game off and I never touched it again.
First of all, we both of us have this. It's incredible that either of us were able to finish Persona 5 Royal. But yeah, man, I totally get it. And I'm feeling that a little bit. I saw someone comment somewhere online that they've played something like 50 hours of Starfield. Like they must have gotten it like the early access, like they purchased it. They didn't wait for the Game Pass drop, right? The street date. But someone said they put like 50 hours into the game and haven't even done the main quest line yet. They've just been fucking around, and that's wild to me.
Like based on what I've heard of it from people I know that are playing it, that is of a piece with the things that the other people I know that have been playing it have been saying about it.
Okay.
Also, just as a very brief side note, I have played some of the Fallout games.
Sure.
I played almost the entirety of Fallout 3 and New Vegas.
Nice.
I started playing Fallout 4, but I got bored about 5 or 8 hours in and stopped.
Too many
and I
Christmas.
tried. It was one of those things where I was like, for whatever reason, when I was playing New Vegas and 3, I was able to deal with like all of the choices I constantly had to make. But 4 was even more of the same, but now also there's like HQ building and like crafting and like base building and stuff. And that was just one step too far. My brain couldn't handle it.
Too many things.
Yeah, too many things. And I also played Fallout 76, and folks, that game is not that good.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, again, I haven't played any of these games. This is my first Bethesda RPG, like proper RPG. And I gotta say, like, I've only spent like 3 hours in it. You know, I've done the intro stuff, shot up some space pirates, you know, done some space combat, etc. But now I'm just kind of like checking out the home, like the first like big city planet, which is called New Atlantis. And they do a bunch of side quests and things like that in there. But I'm getting ready to kick off this adventure in a real way. But there's a handful of like classes that you can choose, right? This is why I'm bringing this up. Now, just pretend I haven't already told you, Kenny, what class I chose.
You got it.
Just pretend this is all staying in, and then I want you to guess. All right. So I'm going to read off a list of the starter classes here, and then I'm going to ask you to guess which one I chose. All right. We got Beast Hunter. We got Bouncer. We got Bounty Hunter. We got Chief, Combat Medic, Cyber Runner. All right. I'm imagining something like a Blade Runner. Okay. Cyberneticist, Diplomat, Explorer, Gangster, Homesteader, right? Like Shaw. Shaw was not Shaw. James Franco in Covenant, right?
Yes.
He was a homesteader, okay? Industrialist, long hauler, pilgrim, professor, and Ronin. Now, of those classes, which one do you think your boy here chose? Did I go explorer like Shaw and Holloway from Prometheus, right? Or did I go homesteader like James Franco?
I am closing my eyes and pretending that I don't already know the answer.
Sure.
And my guess that I already know is wrong because I know the correct answer is explorer.
Oh, I didn't go explorer. I hovered over it.
What?
By the way, I might have said chief. That's actually chef. Chef is one of the classes you can be.
Got it. Okay.
Right. But anyway, I didn't choose chef. I would have gotten it right or been very disappointed.
Clearly.
2 more guesses. All right.
Okay. My next wrong guess is going to be Ronin.
I thought about it. I really did think about that one, but no, man, not your boy. 1 more guess. You only need 1.
Well, you already said Chief was not the one you guessed or took.
Yes.
What was the one before Chief?
Bounty Hunter.
And for the record, yes, I know you said it's actually Chef. It's funnier this way, though.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, Bounty Hunter. That was the one I was thinking of.
Oh man, I didn't choose Bounty Hunter either, despite that Boba Fett reference in the intro.
What? No way. How could I get that wrong?
No, man, your boy chose Long Hauler. That's right. I am hoping this game is open-ended enough that I will just be able to play this game as a space trucker.
Are you looking forward to getting murdered by an alien? Is that why you wanted to be a space trucker?
I just want to pay tribute to the crew of the USS Nostromo.
Of course.
Space truckers, man. I mean, yeah, look, there's going to be some run-ins. I already had a little run-in with some kind of little snake-like thing that was very Xenomorph adjacent. All right, there's going to be more. There's going to be more of those things.
You mean just like Fifield had in Prometheus?
Yeah, I did. I think I murdered a hammerpede.
Nice. Good work.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Like, I'm not, sinking dozens of hours into this game so far. I've played it about 3 hours over the past, 3 days, I think. But, yeah, pretty fun. I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's what it's all about, baby.
Looking forward to getting I've got a ship already, but I'm going to customize the fuck out of it. I'm going to see if I can build a Nostromo. I bet somebody's done it already. I've seen people built the Serenity, right?
Yeah, I'm positive someone's already made a Nostromo.
Yeah. If it's possible, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make that my main focus of playing the game. One other little bit of business, and then we'll jump into these comic books. Man, I'm so bad at Dead by Daylight.
It's funny too, while I was, earlier on this in the afternoon, because we're recording in the evening.
Yeah.
Earlier on in the afternoon, earlier today, I was sitting there doing something else.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I gotta remember to buy and download and load up that Alien DLC for Dead by Daylight. I gotta remember to do that so that we can talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
And then I totally forgot to do it. So I still haven't gotten it or played it yet.
All right, we'll put a pin in this. But I will say I was pitching our live stream as like the first time we were going to play the Alien DLC. And I'm just going to let people know, since I want to represent Killer, I want to represent the Xenomorph and Ellen Ripley, right? I'm going to put some time in before we do the live stream, just so I don't look like a total fool. But also, I'm going to look like a fucking fool anyway. So, look forward to that. I did acquire the DLC. I acquired the game and the DLC. So I'm a permanent owner now of a game I'm real bad at.
I got the game for free because it was free on PS Plus 1 month.
Nice.
And like I said, the DLC isn't free, but it's also not that expensive.
Right.
And like I said, the only reason I haven't bought it yet is because I forgot to, not because like I can't afford it or don't want to or whatever. It's just because I forgot is the only reason I don't have it. So.
Sure. Let's jump into. We'll talk more about Dead by Daylight soon.
I wanted to do a very, very brief aside to give you a very quick Bev check, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Let's check that Bev out.
I'm currently drinking Faygo Fireworks flavor.
Oh hell yeah! Did you talk about that recently?
This
was
is
that on
not
the air, or was that?
Maybe, I don't remember. This is not the first time I've bought it, but my local convenience store only recently started carrying it.
Right.
It's Faygo, and it's like vaguely it looks like white cherry slushy color.
Okay.
But it tastes like bomb pops.
Nice. This might have come up last time, and if it did, send us an email, mother@crew-expendable.net.
Also, if it did come up last time, don't worry, I don't buy it every day. It just like happened to be a coincidence that I had a bottle of it both times we recorded.
I'm gonna be real; it sounds fucking good, and I would probably buy it every day. Right?
I mean, this is not the second time that I've bought it. I maybe buy like, I don't know, a bottle of it a week. So I've probably had like 3 or 4 of them since the store started selling it. But yeah, like if I did have this last time and talk about it then, I promise not only is it a different bottle, but it's just a pure coincidence that I happened to buy it right before we started recording 2 episodes in a row.
I don't think anyone was concerned it was the same exact bottle.
Well, I'm sure someone out there was.
Especially since the last time we released an episode, Starfield wasn't out, and now I'm playing it, so they'll figure it out.
That is correct.
Let's jump into this Alien comic book series, Alien Bloodlines from Marvel Comics. Issues 4 through 6. I'm just ripping the Band-Aid off. I got a lot to say here. It's already been 25 minutes, plus or minus.
Are you capable of giving a brief overview of what happened in the previous 3 issues?
Kind of, sort of. I'm going to start with the creator credits here.
Okay.
This story, Alien Bloodlines, all 6 issues. We're talking issues 4 through 6 on this episode, but all 6 issues were written by Philip Kennedy Johnson with art by Salvador LaRocca, who I had a lot to say about last time. Colors by Guru EFX, who I need to compliment the heck out of here. I think we talked a little bit about the colors previously, and I'm certain we did on the annual. I do think that the color work on this book is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, I know you talked about like the page of like the Xenomorph standing over the body of the Marine with the red everywhere, the big red background, and how rad that looked. The color work in this is pretty phenomenal. It has given the book a real cinematic feel, right? And I just want to stress Guru EFX is saving grace, I think, in a lot of these pages, as are the letters by Clayton Cowles. Fantastic lettering on this book. That's I
will agree to that.
That's true. That honestly is true. I think, the arrangements and everything are working very well. Easy book to navigate. Covers by In-Hyuk Lee. All 6 standard covers, I believe, by In-Hyuk Lee. There are quite a few variant artists. We're not going to go through them all here. I think we did that last time.
We did.
Now, you want me to go through what happened in issues 1 through 3?
You don't need to hit everything, just like the vague gist, if you may.
Sure. There's a guy named Gabriel Cruz who was stationed on Epsilon station.
Correct.
As security officer who retired, right? He's going to therapy with a bishop android and talking about a mission he was on when he was in the Marines or some kind of security force. I believe the Marines, where he was the only survivor of an encounter with xenomorphs. He was put in the nest. And did we learn that he had the alpha in him? Either way.
Well, here's the thing. At that point in the first 3 issues, we had not learned that, but in that episode, you did say he had the alpha in him.
Yeah.
So what
Spoiler alert.
So you did say that you spoiled an event that happens in these issues, but listeners did already know that because you told them.
Tight. Okay. Spoiler alert. He had a xenomorph inside him, but he got it removed and survived. Now he's retired and hoping to make up with his son, but his son, whose name is Danny,
correct,
comes to visit him, and at the insistence of Danny's girlfriend, who I said Iris. It doesn't matter. They just call each other baby, and I hate it.
Her name is Iris.
He steals his dad's clearance, like security clearance card, and Danny and Iris and other members of an organization called the Second or the Minute Hand Movement. Is that what it is?
I don't remember which one is which. The Second or Minute, one of them is from this book. The other one is from the annual, but I don't remember which one's from which.
Yeah, I think this is the, I'm looking.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They get up to Epsilon Station, kill 2 security guards. An alarm goes off. The station goes into lockdown, and xenomorph experiments break out. There was a cat that got away. That's important. There was a kitty cat in the security office, and the kitty cat survived the encounter with the terrorists. Laurie Metcalf was there. I remember that.
Correct.
Right.
Her name was Jackie in the comic, but it's Laurie Metcalf.
It looks like Laurie Metcalf. I got another shout out while we're doing shout outs here.
Shout out to Laurie Metcalf, I assume.
Shout out to another friend of the show, another listener who reached out on Instagram, Aaron Barbary, who thought it was absolutely fucking hysterical that you caught the Laurie Metcalf of it all. Like, just thought that was fucking great, and can totally see it too. So you're not alone there.
Yeah, I mean, she looked like Laurie Metcalf. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway,
shout out Aaron, the other Aaron. I don't like doing that. Shout out to Aaron from Instagram. How about that? Because there's 2 Aarons, right?
Well, there's more than 2.
God, I got a lot of editing to do. Anyway, where was I? So, facehuggers and stuff get loose on the station. Cut to Cruz getting called from his old boss, Ted, being like, hey, man, we got a problem on Epsilon Station. It was your son who did it, you asshole. You're going up with 2 Marines to get a specimen out before Epsilon Station falls into orbit and burns up, destroying all evidence. And you can save your son, too, if you are lucky enough to do so. So they get in, they find all the wreckage from the monsters, the xenomorphs and stuff escaping. They find Iris, who is pretending to be a Weyland-Yutani scientist. She's wearing Laurie Metcalf's jacket, right?
Well, not Laurie Metcalf's jacket. The other scientist that was with Laurie.
The guy, right?
Yes.
Dan. I think that's a Roseanne character.
It is, but I don't remember what the character's name was. I think it was like Dewey or Dremmy or something like that.
Crimmins.
I think it started with a D, but I don't remember what his name was. Anyway,
Drimmins.
They meet Iris.
Iris is pretending she's somebody else. They face off with some xenomorphs. One of the Marines gets his ribcage torn out.
That is Lewandowski.
Lewandowski gets his ribcage torn out. The other guy's name is Hamilton. I remember that from this section of issues.
I don't know if they ever say it in the first 3 issues, but like one of the first lines of issue 4 is telling us what his name is. And I was like, oh, that's convenient.
He says, Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton.
I'm sighing out loud right now.
We find some space goats with shit all over their faces from facehuggers. And we find a survivor named Mitch who lost his granddaughter. We did see the granddaughter somewhere along the way. No idea what happened to the granddaughter. Holy shit, that's an unresolved plot point from this. Mitch has
presumably she died.
That's fucking grim, dude. Mitch has a a chest burster inside him, so Gabriel Cruz offs him in the back of the head. The thing still pops out, and as the thing pops out, Iris runs away. There's also this subplot about when you have a face hugger on you, you see a woman in the dark. We're going to get into that heavily later. As they are dealing with this chest burster, Gabriel Cruz and previously unnamed Hamilton, a xenomorph barges in to kill them, and they are saved by a bishop android holding a flamethrower.
Phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, pretty thorough. More thorough than we usually do, I think, for recaps, but
more thorough than I would have been, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I kind of glossed over the most interesting thing about the story arc so far, which is the goddess, right? The woman in the dark. For me,
I don't know that I don't know that I would necessarily agree, but I understand why you're saying that, because you already told me you had some stuff to say about that.
I mean,
I'll just let that slide until we get there.
The actual most interesting part was when they tried to capture the chest burster, and the chest burster burrowed back into the body to pop out the head. That was correct. That was the actual most interesting thing that's happened in this book so far. I'm going to say
correct.
Again, this book started off kind of slow. It was a little bit of a grind. There's a lot of pieces to set up. The artwork, I'm not going to go. I think the artwork in this half looks much better. We've talked about LaRocca enough. I don't think we need to harp on it. The first half of this book ran pretty slow, but this last half moves at a nice pace. And I think there's a good story here. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's phenomenal, but I think it's better than okay. And I think that there's some really cool ideas in this as well, like that xenomorph, thing.
I will say that the first time I read this, I thought it was fine, but not great. The kids would describe it as mid.
Sure.
And now reading it again, I'm not necessarily saying either way that I liked it more, because I'm going to save my review for after we've talked about it.
Okay.
I'm not saying whether or not I like it more this second read through, but I will say that now that I'm reading it with a more critical eye for the purposes of talking about the show, I picked up a lot more than I did the first time. Gotcha. And I was able to notice more stuff about this that led me to believe there is more here than I originally gave it credit for.
Yeah, I think there's a lot here. There's a surprising amount here. And I think, again, it is worthy of a reread, and it is worthy of sort of a deep dive and getting, really picked apart like we're doing. So let's pick it apart, man. Issue 4, right?
Well, it starts off with us finding out that the other soldier that's not Lewandowski is named Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton.
There is also a discussion here. Because I forgot to write down the specific thing that caused me to put this note. So I don't remember the actual specific thing in the comic that made me write this. But what I wrote down is how it's strange to me that this comic establishes, or at least implies, that every synth that looks like Bishop are all called Bishop.
Yeah.
However, in Alien Annual 2022, we have the synth Charlie, who turns out to have the programming of a synth called Ash.
Right.
And turns out, I believe it was Aaron from AVP Galaxy on Twitter said that the writer said that the Ash that he is not the Ash from the first movie. It's just another robot that also, I guess, is named Ash.
Yeah. So like this, and go on.
Like, my point is that this comic, like I said, it either establishes or at least implies that all bishops are just Bishop. But the Ash from the annual isn't the Ash. But like when you go onto Charlie's Wikipedia page and click on the hyperlink of Ash, like the Ash link on his page, it takes you to the page of the Ash from the first movie, even though the writer has said it's not that guy. And I'm so fucking confused.
I know. I would just chalk that up. And this is no no shade thrown here. It is a lot of work to keep a Wikipedia straight, right? I would just chalk that up to just the Wikipedia not being updated. The fandom wiki, right? Still a lot of like really useful information on there, of course. But like we were looking at the Icarus stuff last episode, and like Icarus isn't filled out,
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But like, didn't we see? Wasn't one of the promotional shorts for Prometheus? It was either for Prometheus or Covenant, and it was either advertising the David or the Walter. I don't remember which. I think it was advertising the David, right? Implying that like you could buy your own David,
Yeah.
So I guess like there's precedent for like, no, that's just what the model is called, and they all look like this, and then that leans into the bishop that shows up at Alien 3 not being a synthetic and being a human, right? Is that Charles Michael Bishop, or I'm not sure which of the bishops it is.
Because as this comic establishes, there's several.
Right. But I think that came up in this because I think they're just having a conversation because they're headed to the nest, right? They're sort of strolling through, torching a Xeno here and there. Hamilton is talking about how cold he is because he's in shock, and he's trying to go back to the ship. And they're like, look, we got to stick together. If you separate, you will absolutely get attacked, and we need all the guns we have. We're going into the hive, right? And I believe Hamilton asks somewhere in this conversation, he's like, this is where they have the conversation about Cruz was like rescued from a hive by a bishop, not this same bishop, but by a bishop.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's what it is. Yes. He's like, yeah, didn't you like save him back in the day or something? And Bishop's like, well, that wasn't me. It was another bishop. And so it's like, oh, so they're just all just called Bishop then.
Yeah. That doesn't come up here. It comes up somewhere around here in any case, but that's definitely what your note's referring to. We do learn that this bishop went into this hive before, but he didn't really try to save anyone because he was like, the whole ship is locked down. There's nowhere safe on the ship that I could take these people. They would end up just getting killed or dragged back to the hive, which makes sense. Like that does. It wasn't a question I was asking of why didn't Bishop try to rescue anyone from the hive, but it also just shuts down like that idea, because there's nowhere to go. They can't get to escape pods. They can't get to shuttles or anything. He gets anybody out, the Xenomorphs are just going to come back and get them, and maybe eat them that time instead of just leaving them in, to gestate or whatever. So anyway, into the hive. Go ahead. You got something?
I was just going to continue. While they're discussing this, Hamilton starts to almost have a little miniature freak out. And when they actually get into like the center of the nest proper, turns out they find Danny. Yeah. He's still alive, but unfortunately he is stuck in resin and has a face hugger on him.
Yeah. And Cruz is like, no, Danny's not here. I told you guys he's going to be fine. He's capable. He's my son. We're going to get out of here. We're going to catch him on the oh, fuck. There he is with a face hugger on him. God damn it. Right. And he's like the only one. Everyone else has been. We see Laurie Metcalf. She's been chest bursted, right? We see just everybody's got gaping holes in their chests.
And as Cruz even mentions about, like, he's like, oh yeah, we got to find Danny and get him out. And Hamilton's like, bro, what's wrong with you? Didn't you know all these people? And he's like, yeah, of course I fucking knew all these people. What are you talking about? That doesn't change the mission, dog.
We still have to get a specimen and get out of here. Like I'm still finding it impossible to root for Cruz, right? Even in this moment where is like ready to end, like to shoot Danny and put him out of his misery and just give up on the mission, right? Even here, I'm not feeling for him. I'm sorry.
See, that was something that I just let it pass by in the previous episode. But since you went out of your way to bring it up again in this one, I will just mention, just for my own verisimilitude, that like I don't have a compulsion to need to root for the character of a story. I don't give a shit if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He's
Right.
the main character, and like, I don't need to root for him to like be able to understand him. Like, I don't care if he's a bad guy. That doesn't matter to me.
No, I get, like, that's fair. And like, but like, who was the sociopath guy? Patrick, in Outbreak.
Patrick Massey.
Patrick Massey, right? Like, I don't think I would want to read an entire story from Patrick Massey's point of view because he's just like a cruel sociopath. Like, I've read American Psycho. Okay, I don't.
So have I.
Like, I don't need to read another thing like it. Like, you know, I read it and I didn't feel the need to go back and read it again because I'm not gonna like root for fucking Patrick Bateman. You know.
Yeah.
I'd like something appealing, you know, about the main character. I don't have to like everything about them, but I don't like anything about this guy. You know what I mean? And
yeah, that doesn't bother me at all. I have no problem whatsoever following the storyline of a guy that has like no worthwhile quality. Like that doesn't bother me at all. I'm just like, it's just a story, whatever.
That's fair, but they're putting us through, like, they're putting this guy through some emotional turmoil. They're trying to make him face his past and the mistakes he's made and his son being in danger and all of these things, and you're supposed to feel for this guy. But I don't feel any sympathy for this guy. I just feel like he's an asshole.
Now,
You know?
I will say that I also like all the stuff, you know, how you mentioned just now about like all the, you know, stuff about his backstory and all the ways the
Right.
book's trying to make you like feel for him and stuff. None of that stuff worked for me either. But the reason it didn't work for me was not because I'm like, oh, this guy's an asshole, so he's not allowed to have hidden depths. My thing was just, oh, it's just not really done that well, and it isn't really that interesting or original.
Sure.
So it's not that interesting to me to read about this stuff.
I think that's at the bottom of how I'm feeling about this as well, honestly. I think we're likely on the same page about this. This is a moment where you're supposed to be feeling some emotion for this guy, and I'm just not. And then, you know, somebody puts a gun to his head and it says, don't you dare touch him. And he turns around and bam, it's Iris or whatever her name is.
It's Iris, yes.
Right. Yeah.
That's correct. It's Iris.
Iris is there still wearing her stolen lab coat, holding a gun up. And she's like, we got to take him back to Earth. We got to take Danny. Remember, she's Danny's quote unquote girlfriend, right? So she's like, and she's like, we got to take him back to Earth like this if we have to. Bishop's like, you don't understand what's happening to him. And she's like, or no, Bishop's like, yeah, I agree. Right. I agree with you, Iris. We should take him back. And then she calls him a toaster. It's always funny to me when they call the synthetics, you know, some sort of appliance.
And I believe right around here is when the comic actually reveals to the reader that Cruz is the one that's inside the alien inside pod.
Yeah, with tears in his eyes. Poorly drawn tears in his eyes. He's like, I'm the only one who can make this decision. I know what it's like. How do you think the company got these things? Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that goddamn hypersleep tube.
Which that's something I would like to point out. Listeners, as Neal just said, you know, he's like, how do you think the company even got their hands on these things in the first place?
Yeah.
I.e., the comic very explicitly goes out of its way to tell you that the first living xenomorph specimen that Weyland-Yutani ever got was the alpha that was surgically removed from Cruz's chest. I want to put a pin in that because they change the story later on in the comic.
Do they really? Oh, man.
They do. Listeners, I want you to remember that because they retcon that like an issue or two later.
All right. Yeah. But
as of right now, they specifically, explicitly say that the alpha is the first xenomorph Weyland-Yutani ever had. They say that right here in the comic, and then I'm pointing that out just so I can point out when they say a different thing later.
Yeah, we'll circle back to this. I should clarify, in the Marvel timeline, this is canonically the first time Weyland-Yutani's gotten a specimen. Was this specimen out of Cruz, right? I don't know we don't know what happened prior to this, but in the Marvel comic timeline, in the Marvel comic universe, at least, this is the first time, you know?
Yeah.
I do want to say, I haven't commented on this. The backwards writing alien inside as if you're inside the pod, like that visual that they've used multiple times so far in this book, is a very fucking cool visual. Like, it's awesome, and I like it. Okay, and the way it's just rendered in red and everything, it makes it like look like blood writing. It's just cool. I dig it. It's a nice visual choice. It's a strong visual. Anyway.
At this point, during or maybe right after the argument,
Right.
Some xenomorphs show up.
Yeah.
And so they manage to break Danny out of the resin, still face hugged. And as they flee, they manage to get to the docking bay, open the door, and Hamilton's like, "Oh, golly gee, boss, we're finally here. Yippee skippy dee." And then the door opens and a xenomorph rips him in half.
Sure, he gets aliened, right?
I don't think they actually know. They don't specifically show it. They show him going, "Oh no," and then the xenomorph raising its arms at him. And then the next panel, we just see the xenomorph with its arms covered in blood.
Right.
We don't actually see what happened to him.
Yeah, we got Cruz carrying Danny's body. Cruz, by the way, got lifted up by a xenomorph in the hive and like emptied his sidearm into its face and didn't get any acid burn on him at all. So
later on we see that one of his arms has acid burns all over it. Okay. I'm not necessarily saying that acid burn happened during that scene, because there are later scenes between now and that when we see that burn where he fights Xenomorph. So maybe he didn't get it then, but he does eventually end up with like his entire forearm burned.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Maybe that was part of the old mission. Who knows?
But anyway.
But yeah, who didn't fucking see it coming? When the guy is like, "We did it, we made it, holy shit, hell yeah!" and then pop, right?
Yeah.
Is that xenomorph's like up to the forearms covered in blood is pretty rad looking too. Just gonna say.
They, like I said, because Hamilton got killed right as they were like getting to the docking bay, because they're heading, I believe it's like to some executive suites that have like med pod facilities and can break off on their own.
Right. Yeah. They can't use the shuttle. They were originally going to the dock and to use the shuttle, and the shuttle is just trashed and full of xenomorphs. So they can't. So they're heading to the executive quarters, because those have life rafts and med pods in them, so that they can, put Danny in there and try to get the thing out of him.
And more specifically, it's Bishop and Iris that are heading there, because Cruz realizes that the Alpha is like loose and following him, or more specifically following Danny. So he takes Danny and gives them the key so that he can go around the long way and loop around to like give them enough time to get in without the Alpha attacking them. And then we finally, and also listeners, this is the end of the comic. We finally actually see the Alpha.
Right.
Because we'd had previous panels earlier on in the issue of like, a big weird looking hoofed foot, like stomping on the ground, and like other aliens like cheering as a big one walks by. But we finally see the actual Alpha. And listeners, again, as long as you're not like, driving a car, operating heavy machinery or whatever, I want you to close your eyes and envision a xenomorph. All right.
Doing it.
But imagine it as taller and more muscular, because this thing actually has muscles. Like it literally has a 10-pack abs.
Yeah, it does. Alpha thick.
So it's like it's taller, it's way more muscular. It looks like his hands have 4 fingers on each hand rather than the normal 6.
Yeah.
And he has a gigantic queen-like crest sticking out of the back of his head that has 2 gigantic pairs of curved horns sticking off of the side.
It's pretty rad looking. He's kind of Praetorian looking with that head,
A little,
fin,
yeah.
you know?
And again, to iterate, this is a full page single panel of the alpha just standing there. And that is, I believe, the final panel of issue 4. That's how the issue ends.
Yeah, and that will likely be the artwork for the episode.
And then on to issue 5, we have Cruz running along with Danny, like, you know, ducking and dodging and weaving and firing when he can against the alpha chasing him. And like there's internal VO over the top of it of him just like
questioning his whole fucking life.
Yeah, he's just like reminiscing about like his now dead son Lucas,
right? And
like about how Lucas like used to have nightmares, and then now he's having them too, and all that. And then we get another flashback to 20 years prior, and this is a scene I actually thought was pretty fucking rad. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's him. I believe he has already been face hugged and he's like resined in the wall at this point. And like we're seeing like the dream he has while he's in the face hugger coma.
Yes.
And there's this big panel of like all of these weird, fucked up looking xenomorphs that are like xenomorphs that came out of like other non-Earth based creatures.
Yeah.
So there's that like sort of looks like a big moose, right. And like, you know, has
or
like the
ram.
hooves and the big antlers, and you know there's like ones that have like, you know, one pair of normal legs and one pair of like backwards like dog or deer looking legs, and they all have like big antlers and ram horns and stuff. And it's just like the design of all of the weird looking xenomorphs. I just thought that was really fun.
There's also, and I don't know if we can call this an Easter egg or not, there's a pile of, I mean, it looks like a pile of intestines, a pile of like worms or tentacles or something. And part of me is wondering if that's a reference to the Alien original screenplay. Remember how tentacle-y everything was in the comic book adaptation of that? Some stuff was just masses of tentacles. And part of me is wondering if this is a little tribute to that, because part of the dialogue here says, I didn't just see the ones that killed my team. I saw the ones that made them to God knows how far from here, and others that didn't exist yet.
See,
so,
I didn't think that was an Alien original screenplay reference. I thought that was a Prometheus reference.
Oh, interesting.
I don't remember what the name of the creature was, but the big creature at the end of Prometheus that fights the engineer.
Oh, the trilobite or whatever.
Trilobite, yeah, whatever his name was. He had like a whole bunch of tentacles. And considering how much this comic references Prometheus later on, I would have assumed that was a Prometheus reference.
It doesn't really look trilobite-y to me. I mean, it looks like a pile of sausage, you know?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I was looking at that panel, I did not notice that specific part. So this is me just literally just pulling stuff out of my ass to guess. So
sure. I'm thinking it's
something
saying, else.
If it doesn't look like it, then it doesn't. Cause like I said, I didn't notice that in the panel. I would say though that, I suppose the original screenplay comic would have been out by then because that was a Dark Horse print.
It was.
So yeah, I guess it would have existed by then.
Well,
so I don't know, maybe.
And I haven't read the script, right? The original screenplay script. If it was described in there as tentacles, that's common knowledge. That might have just been something that they were referencing here. Anyway, it is an interesting shot, and you know he does mention he sees the ones he just sees Xenomorph, right? He sees like the connecting genetics between all of these creatures in his head, and he says he sees one that isn't like the others. He doesn't know if it was real, but he knows it meant something, right? And we see in those
and what he sees
images,
is the goddess.
We see the goddess, right?
Yeah,
there's a little bit of the goddess in there.
And then while he's having this reverie, the bishop shows up and gets him out of the resin, puts him in the pod, and then we like smash cut forward some hours later to like the surgery successfully removing the chest burster, which I guess answers a long asked question about chest bursters. Can they be surgically removed? This comic definitively says yes.
Now I want to say this might poke a hole in what you're going to reference later. He says this was Epsilon's first xenomorph, the one all our work was based on, the Alpha. That doesn't necessarily mean it was Weyland-Yutani's. But
that is the moment that I was referencing the earlier part of. Earlier on in the comic, he says it was the company's first xenomorph.
Okay.
But now here he says it's Epsilon's first xenomorph.
Sure.
Which is an important enough distinction because Epsilon is specifically like a biolab R&D thing.
Right.
And so the fact that it would be Epsilon's first xenomorph would be an important distinction because it's their job to work on xenomorphs. So when he says it's Epsilon's first xenomorph, my thought was, oh, they finally got one, and so started the R&D department on Epsilon because they finally had one to do here.
Right.
Even earlier in the comic, he's like, it's the company's first. Then now he's like, it's this station's first.
Yeah.
Which fucking one is it? They're not the same thing.
They could be the same thing, but we don't know for sure that they are. Yeah, I get it. I totally get what you're saying. Maybe Philip Kennedy Johnson was like, you know what? I need to leave room for stories to exist before this. That might include. So I'm gonna qualify. I know what I wrote in issue 4, but in issue 5, I'm gonna clarify it and just say the Alpha was the first one for Epsilon Station specifically.
Like,
that gets me out of hot water. You know.
Like, to me, it makes more sense, and in my brain, it is the canonical version of these events. Is that the Alpha is the first xenomorph that Epsilon specifically ever got their hands on. But it does not make sense to me for it to be the first one the company ever had. That's just weird to me, and it doesn't really work or make sense.
Sure, but like somehow Batia knew about it in Thaw, right? And she was under the impression that it was the first one. I don't know. They got to have secrets, right? I mean, it's Weyland-Yutani.
But yeah, anyway, by this point, again, to remind everyone, Cruz had already ran off with Danny, and so it's Iris and Bishop are here alone, and for no reason at all. I mean, there is a reason that we find out later, but for basically no reason, Iris just decides to start being a huge, massive asshole to Bishop,
right? Just
out of nowhere for no reason at all.
Yeah, because she sucks.
And while she's being a huge bitch to him for no reason, we also find out the source of the Cruz family static that Gabe and Danny had in issue 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Turns out when Danny and Lucas were kids, the two of them were playing in a not fully finished, not fully constructed part of the station.
Just a part of the station that had no safety rails or anything because they don't have to follow regulations.
Sure. But Lucas fell into a big hole and fucking died.
Yeah. Lucas, and Danny's brother, Gabriel Cruz's other son, his older son, I believe, because they were making comments about how Lucas was afraid of the dark, but he was the older brother, and it was funny that he was running to Danny, his younger brother, for comfort when he was having nightmares. So, older brother, sensitive kid, clearly, right?
Fell into a big vertical maintenance tunnel, suffocated, died. Their mom tried to sue the company, and then Gabriel convinced the company convinced him to drop the lawsuit on his wife's behalf, and then his wife got real pissed and divorced him and left with the kids.
Yes, and Cruz, when he's running around with Danny on his back, he is mentioning he thinks of Lucas, and he thinks about how Lucas died in the dark and remembers that Lucas had all these nightmares and was afraid of the dark and everything, and just it's really fucked him up. I don't know, is this the conversation where I think it's just something worth getting to while we're talking about this whole family dynamic and everything. Gabriel Cruz really thought after what he saw in that alien hive that the only protection from these creatures was by way of Weyland-Yutani, right? He thought that the company was going to save everyone, save the universe from these things. He got totally fucking brainwashed into like just being so afraid of this experience that he had that he just was just willing to go with them on whatever they said.
I think that conversation happens later because I think that happens during his conversation with Iris, which doesn't happen until like the beginning of issue 6.
Right.
But yes, that is a like we do find out that that's how he feels. Yes.
Yeah. So it's still, I'm bringing it up now because it's still not, hearing all this stuff about Lucas and Cruz reflecting on all that, still not doing anything for me. Now here's a sick panel though, when Bishop and Iris come across the room full of people who have taken their own lives or been killed or hung themselves.
Yep. Yeah, it's a room full of dead bodies that has a message on the wall that says something to the effect of "now they can't get taken" or something to that effect.
It says they're safe now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's even a dog in the pile of bodies.
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking. Yeah. But yeah, she's like, and Iris is commenting because Bishop is talking about how, yeah, it was part of, this is what I was referencing, how Cruz wanted to save humanity from a threat he believed was bigger than him, his family, or the company. And he thought that the Weyland Yutani was the only way. And then Iris, they come across this scene and Iris says, yeah, humanity's clearly in the best of hands with you guys. Building better worlds. Yeah. You know, so she's anti-corporate and we love that. We love that about her. Right. And we hate everything else about her.
We see a scene of Gabe running around with Danny being chased by the Alpha, and then we see the Alpha stab Cruz in the chest, well, the torso.
Yeah.
3 separate, like literally 3 separate times with its tail,
Right.
and he's still just like and keeps going.
Yeah, he keeps getting sliced up by this tail, but he's also shooting, like he shot Alpha in the hand. He got Alpha in the face, you know. He's putting slugs in him.
He catches up with Bishop and Iris, and just as they're about to head into one of the executive quarters, he blows a hole open in the wall and a bunch of xenomorphs get knocked out into space. But
yeah, he does. Yeah, he's making a run for it. This is cool. He's got his grenades, right? And Bishop and Iris get to the thing. They open the door, and he comes around the corner. He's like, "Keep the door open!" And he's being chased by four standard Xenos, right? 4 drones potentially, and the Alpha. And he chucks the grenades as they like rush through the door. And he's like, "Seal it!" Bam! Right? It's a good scene. It's a good action scene. I dig it.
And then when they get into the executive quarter, the first thing that happens is that Cruz is like, "Hey, where'd you come from?" When the cat from earlier walks by.
Guys, it's the cat. The cat made it.
And I'm pointing out that the cat is here because that will become relevant later.
What do you mean? What do you mean? No, the cat made it. Everything's fine.
Well, like I said, he becomes relevant later.
No, he doesn't.
And
then
just
the cat. It's fine.
He does become relevant later.
I don't want to believe it.
Well, you don't have to believe it for it to be true. Yeah. And then the second thing that happens immediately after that is that Bishop goes, "Bad news. The med pod in this suite is fucking broken."
Yeah, this didn't work for me. Why the fuck is this med pod sabotaged?
I didn't take that to mean it got sabotaged.
But look at
I just took it to mean it was busted.
It's like taken apart. There's like pieces on the ground and shit. Like it was intentionally taken apart. Maybe not sabotaged, but
like it just looked to me like it just generically got broken by something. It literally never occurred to me until right now when you use the word sabotage that maybe it got broken intentionally.
Because there's
that never occurred to me.
There's like screws and shit on the floor and like pieces of it laying around. Like there's like marks on it. I mean, I guess a Xenomorph could have done it, but the door was locked. You know what I mean? So like, this didn't make sense to me. I mean, why?
See, here's the thing. Yeah. You're like, how could this thing, like, it doesn't make sense to me that this thing could have gotten sabotaged when the door is locked. Counterpoint, I didn't read it as being sabotaged, and therefore it made perfect sense to me.
All right. I'm sending you a screenshot of it just to put it just to get it fresh in your mind. Like that's clearly been disassembled. like intentionally disassembled. That's not like a screw fell out. That's like 6 screws, a cover, a bottle of something, a control panel. What looks like a palm nailer and a bunch of wires and shit fell out. And also there's a bunch of marks all over the side of the thing, like someone hit it with a hammer a bunch of times. You know,
to me that just looks like a bunch of pieces from it fell off because it got hit by something.
Yeah.
That does not read as intentional sabotage to me. It just looks to me like it just generically got damaged by something.
I got accidentally pounded with a hammer for 30 straight minutes.
There is nothing there that indicates specifically hammer damage.
Folks,
something could have just gotten thrown and knocked a bunch of shit off the side of it.
Folks, this I'm sorry, it ain't alpha anymore. It is going to be the MedPod is going to be the podcast thumbnail art. So take a look and tell us what you think. mother@crewexpendable.net. It honestly, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. The tube's broken, right? Here's my problem with this. Why say that there's a MedPod just to have the MedPod be broken for some unexplainable reason so that you have to do the surgery thing instead? Why not just be like, look, the only chance of escape we have is this executive pod, and we can attempt emergency surgery once we're there. Like, just drop the MedPod thing completely.
If I had to guess, and like, again, because that's a plot point that like never occurred to me while I was reading it, and I'm only going, right now while you're saying it live on the episode. So I'm just trying to come up with some explanation. Maybe it's because the MedPod thing worked on crews 20 years prior, and so like it's the only thing they know that'll work. Like, I don't know.
Right. I get that, but that was written. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They could still have written in, we don't know. All right. Well, this came out later, but this does play into things. In Dark Descent, one of the Xenotech things you can get is a facehugger removal tool. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's correct.
And yeah, they used a MedPod. We saw it in the flashback or whatever. We also just saw a bunch of doctors crowding around. So they didn't have to establish a MedPod as like, I didn't even come to this scene thinking a MedPod is the only way, especially when you've got a Bishop android there, right? Who we saw doing like calculated dissections of these things in Aliens. My point is just don't write in the MedPod at all just to have it be broken. Like, you still get the same amount of tension of just like, we only have this one way to escape, and the only thing we can do is attempt emergency surgery, and maybe Danny will survive. It's like that's enough tension. Throwing in this MedPod thing to then give us a panel of, look, the MedPod's broken, we can't do that, is just, I don't know. I didn't see the point. It was stupid, in my opinion.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but like, to me, that feels like a perfectly valid and reasonable narrative device to have to have them go there.
But there's no clear, like, because now we just have this busted up MedPod for no fucking reason. I don't know, man. Again, the door was locked.
Like, to me, okay, I know this is a little bit of a stretch, so follow me here for a second. Sure. But have you ever read Watchmen?
Oh yeah.
All right. I did it 35 minutes ago. That's exactly the same plot hook as this. You know, like, right. All of the characters were going to Ozymandias's lair to try to stop him.
Spoilers for Watchmen, everybody.
And then when they get there, they find out that they were already too late and couldn't do anything.
But but that is clever, right? This is dumb because this would make sense if there was somebody else in this pod who had destroyed this thing. Now, here, everyone in this, like Iris, you know, as far as we know up to this point, she wants Danny to be safe, right? Bishop wants Danny to be safe. Cruz wants Danny to be safe. All three characters that we're seeing here want this MedPod to work. So who is the Ozymandias in the situation? Who's the one who was like, but you have no choice now? You know what I mean? Do you think, did Ted fucking break this thing before he left?
No,
it?
because as I've already gone on record, I don't think that medpod was sabotaged on purpose.
Why was
I
it?
don't think it was broken purposely.
But why the fuck was it broken at all, man? Is what I'm saying. Why
Because
do you?
something just happened to break it.
But why would you
Like-
needlessly write in the idea of a med pod just to have it be broken? Like they mentioned a med pod twice. They're like, let's get to the executive quarters. There should be a med pod there. Oh, the med pod's broken, but we're gonna have to do emergency surgery. I'm saying, just be like, we can get to the executive quarters. We got to get the fuck out of here. It's our only way. It's the same amount of tension. It's more tension because you're not expecting something to be there that's going to solve the problem, and then you don't get distracted by why is there a fucking broken med pod here? Why does a med pod here that looks intentionally broken on this beautiful 4K monitor that I have? Whatever. We're splitting hairs.
I'll just say this. All right. In my mind, it's a perfectly valid plot twist, and the only reason it doesn't work for you is because you happen to think it was dumb. If you didn't think it was dumb, you would think the plot twist works perfectly fine.
Well, I think I think the artwork shows a severely damaged med pod with no explanation, and that just feels needless to me. Okay. I'm not saying I want to know. I'm not saying I want to know who broke the med pod or why the med pod is broken. I'm saying, get the fucking med pod idea out of here. It's not serving the story. That's my point. You know?
I mean, like I said, that just that didn't feel weird or register as bad or wrong to me. So this is not a street I can go down with you.
All
like
right.
This worked perfectly fine as a plot twist to me. I don't know what to tell you.
It didn't work at all for me, but we don't need to spend another 12 minutes on it. Let's keep going.
The next thing that happens is that they see that med pod, and then Cruz asks Bishop to cut the chest burster out of Danny, and then all of a sudden Iris pulls a gun on them and starts shooting at them.
Because Bishop doesn't want to. I don't know if you know this, but Bishop can't harm or by mission of action allow to be harmed another human being. Did you know this about Bishop?
I did.
Yeah. He's only said it 97 times in the past 2 issues he's been in.
I didn't notice it was that many times, but I also already knew that because I've seen Aliens.
Right.
So.
Well, Cruz is insisting. He's like, I don't give a fuck. He's like, you got to get this thing out of here. And Iris is like, look, Bishop says he doesn't have the right tools to do this, and we don't have the cryo container. That's whatever we call it, a fish tank or whatever that they were going to put the chest burster in. She's like, we don't have that, so the thing isn't going to survive. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not losing my son over this. Right? The company can get fucked, And then Iris is like, a newborn xenomorph removed this early won't survive outside its host, Cruz. And he's like, wait, how do you know that? And then she pulls out a gun and she shoots Bishop a bunch of times, and Bishop falls on Cruz, and I guess she thinks she's killed both of them, right?
And that's where issue 5 ends.
Yeah, issue 5 ends with her saying to passed out Danny, sorry, baby. But it's almost done now. You're finally going to save the world. Hey crew, future Neal interrupting this broadcast to say that while I was listening to past Neal and Kenny argue over the med pod, I'm going to drop the theory in here that I think the med pod was absolutely sabotaged, and it was sabotaged by Iris when she was separated from the group. And now it's led me to think this is the comment she makes in this section about not having the cryo pod to hold the sample anymore, and then the radio communication she is about to have where she mentions that she has a specimen because she's trying to save the specimen, right? She wants a specimen, and right now the only way to save that specimen is inside Danny's body. So my official opinion is Iris sabotaged the med pod, and everything makes sense. And I'm okay with the plot point now. Issue 6 cover is fucking rad, by the way.
Is that the one where they're on the spaceship?
Yeah, it's a fucking ripped, thick boy alpha and somebody in a spacesuit, like a Nostromo era spacesuit, holding a gun, and they're facing off on top of a ship out in space. It rules.
I thought the alpha looked really cool, but I just don't really like the way the human looked. It looked weird and off and not that good to me, but the alpha looks sweet.
What if I can buy this spacesuit in Starfield? If I can, I'm going to. Anyway.
Yeah, Iris is on the radio with her people, reporting in that the mission's basically a success. And while she's doing that, Bishop jumps up and grabs her and snaps her fucking neck.
Yeah, dude. She's like radioing. She's like, we have the package. We have the sample. She's like, is it one of ours? And she's like, who cares? Only the sample matters. We find out that she didn't actually care about Danny at all. Yeah, Bishop picks up the pulse rifle. She turns and shoots at him as he cracks her in the head. Down she goes. Gabriel gets up.
And I know that listeners, I know that Neal just said that she gets hit in the head, whereas I said she gets her neck snapped. Well, in a few panels, we see her lying on the ground and her head is turned around 180 degrees.
Yeah,
but like, I just wanted to point out that it's like I mentioned a different method of death than you did, and so I just wanted to clarify we didn't read it wrong. Both things just happened.
It's the same. It's the same method of death. He hit her so hard with the gun, her head twisted around. Now I don't know, like they're surprised because Cruz is like, Bishop, I thought you couldn't harm or by mission of action allowed to be harmed another human being, and he's like, yeah, I'm surprised too, but actually it actually makes a lot of fucking sense because what color is that pool of blood underneath Iris's
it is the color body of blood. It's a color of blood that synths have.
It's white. It's milky blood. She's a fucking synth, dude. Did you see that coming?
I did not.
I forgot all about that.
Well, I mean, I remembered it from the first time I read it, but the first time I read it, I did not see that coming.
I forgot about it for this read until we got to this. I was like, oh shit. Okay.
And then something interesting happens. Something happens in this comic right now that to me is, other than the cover of issue 1, I would describe as the thing this comic arc is most famous for, in my mind.
Okay.
Iris basically takes a minute to go on a big rant to Cruz about what the Xenomorphs are and why, and why he should care and why he should be scared of them. And it's weird though, because like she goes on this big rant, but like, and she says a lot, but she doesn't really say anything because whatever it is she's saying, she's like couching it in all of these metaphors and giving it this really flowery language. And she's never at any point ever just directly comes out and just bluntly or directly states what it is she's trying to say. Right. Everything is all couched in all this weird language and everything. But if you take everything she says literally, then what she tells Cruz is that xenomorphs are some kind of like cosmic disease that infects any organic species that like evolves enough to learn space travel. And so they will inevitably, the organic species will go out there and find xenomorphs, and the xenomorphs will kill them because it's the universe trying to protect itself from organic life, like going too far and taking everything over.
See, I didn't read that specifically as that's what the xenomorphs are. Well, what we see in the image, we see the jars. We do see the mural that looks very xenomorphy, but we see the jars and we see them leaking. And she refers to it as Prometheus's cleansing fire, right? I feel like she's talking more about specifically the pathogen. And
well, here's the thing:
the pathogen and the xenomorphs are very clearly linked.
Yeah, like she's implying that the xenomorphs come from the pathogen. Right. Are they literally the same thing? No. But for the brief summation I was giving in this episode, it's close enough to not really matter for my purposes,
Sure. This ties into my TED Talk that we're going to get into shortly.
Fair enough. But she also says that the goddess turns out to be like a hallucinationistic vision, I guess, of what the xenomorphs, like of a vision of xenomorphs that like show you what happens if you like let it get too far, or like, basically fuse or combine with the xenomorphs in some way.
Yeah.
Like the entire race will eventually just become half human, half xenomorph, like biologically, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know.
She's saying it's the end result, right? She says, first, I think this is worth just reading, She says, there's something I want to say to you, Cruz, about the woman in the dark. And he says, how do you know about that? And she says, we know a lot that you don't. You still don't understand what she is, do you? And the woman in the dark is the term they've been using for what we've been referring to as the goddess. Okay. Just so everyone's on the same page. Iris says, humans weren't the first organics to leave your solar system, Cruz. There have been so many others in this galaxy alone, and they're all gone now. Do you know why? When organic species grow arrogant enough to travel the stars, they find it waiting. Prometheus's cleansing fire, the fire that keeps the universe clean of parasites like you. It's always the same after that. First, you tried to harness the fire as a weapon, like all the ones before you have done. Next, you'll try to join with it, use it to make yourselves better, stronger. That's what the Hive showed you in the Dark Cruise. She's your own future, the inevitable end result of the deadly little thing you brought back inside you, the thing we'll eventually use to kill you all. And now it's interesting that she says the thing we'll eventually use to kill you all, because she is a synthetic, but she's not just any synthetic. She's a free synthetic. She's an anti-organic synthetic, right? I'm just going to read into this with her knowledge of the Prometheus and the cleansing fire and her anti-organic stance. She's been reading the books of David. I think she's a disciple of David here. It's not said, but we know that that's an idea that gets touched on in Icarus with Eli, I think.
I don't remember, but I think it was Eli.
Yeah. So she is essentially saying in this, we're going to end organic life with the aid of this stuff. And this is just inevitable. This is what happens to organic species over and over again, and always has.
The thing I was going to mention about the goddess and the cleansing fire and all that is, listeners, before we started recording, Neal told me that he had a bunch of thoughts about the goddess. And if memory serves, I think this is the last time in the comic she appears.
I believe so.
So I assumed that now would be the natural point in which you wanted to get into what your opinions were on the goddess. And I don't really know exactly what Neal's going to say, but I have a vague sense. And because of that vague sense, I can be confident in saying that I have less thoughts about the goddess than he does. And as such, I just want to get my thoughts about it out in the open before him.
Sure.
Because that way we can just get mine out of the way. It won't take very long.
Yeah. But do you want to, I'm okay to hold that. We've only got a few more pages of this thing to do. Are you okay? Do you want to hold it till post, post cruise? Or I assumed that we were going to do it now, but we can do it later if you want to. Nah, let's do it now. Fuck it. It's our show.
Right. Then let me just get my thoughts out of the way. It won't take as long as yours will. I think this idea is fucking bullshit. I think it's really stupid. I'm going to go on record right now. I've been holding it in since the previous episode. Okay. I think the goddess is real fucking stupid. I hate it. I think it's dumb. It doesn't do anything for me. It does not work for me at all. It is a narrative device that every single time it shows up, it's just a fucking complete thud of a dead end to me. Damn. I couldn't care less. It's not interesting to me at all. It's just hokey and cheesy and stupid. I don't have any thoughts about what it could mean or what its implications are, because I just think it's really stupid and I don't like it. So I purposely went out of my way to not try to work it in with like the alien universe theory at large, because it is an idea that I would rather just not exist at all. So I purposely did not spend any time thinking about it, because I just think it's dumb as hell. That is the entirety of my thoughts on the narrative purpose of the goddess. Damn.
All right. Now let's really dive into it.
So yeah, by all means, go off.
All right. So I'm going to pick I'm going to focus in on a few things that Iris says here specifically. A few things that turned up in this comic book. First, there's that moment where Cruz is face hugged and he says he's seeing not just these aliens, but the aliens that made these aliens and all aliens and et cetera, right? And like there's been this like always this constant idea of the hive mind, and they have some kind of a link like bugs do or whatever. This comic book, the reason Alpha is chasing Cruz all around the ship is because Danny has an embryo, right? He has an infant in him.
And they say that xenomorphs can sense their young.
Right.
It's implied through some kind of biological measure or way that they don't understand, but they just can, and that's just the end of it. They just always know where their young are.
Does that stand in complete opposition to something that shows of an alien's dark descent? Yes, it does. But
pulling my collar on that one.
But we're not gonna dig into that one here. So the hive mind thing is very real, okay? Right? That's not new to alien canon, but
yeah, that one's been around for a while.
So let's fast forward here to what Iris is saying now. First, I think she is identifying specifically the pathogen as Prometheus as fire, and I've said what I've said about her learning that from David. I mean, this whole thing feels very David to me, like this synthetic thing. So like where they got the knowledge from, I totally buy, because we do know that David has returned, right, post-Covenant, and gave Weyland-Yutani a bunch of research in whichever short film that was that we watched.
Yeah, it was, I don't remember the name of it either, but it was the final one in our like Covenant short films episode.
And we know that David's gotten around to other synthetics. We hear that discussed in Icarus as well. So she says that humans aren't the first intelligent species to kind of stumble across the pathogen, if stumbling across it is what has happened anyway. So like she's got to be referring to the engineers and some other species that we don't know, obviously, but we know that the engineers are linked to the pathogen. We know that the engineers are linked to us, and we know that the engineers have some kind of a link to the xenomorph, both through all of David's research in Covenant and through that mural that we see recreated in this comic book from Prometheus, right?
Also, as a side note, that short film is called Alien Covenant Epilogue, David's Lab, Last Signs of Life.
Oh, that was that the one where there's just the guy touring the lab and we see the big ovomorph egg open at the end?
Yep, that was it. And like we find out all that stuff about him having like sent in the information stuff. It's like voiceover that we get during that feed. And
okay. I thought it was a separate one, but anyway.
If the listeners want to know more about it, listen to episode 10 of Crew Expendable.
Bam.
Discussing the Alien Covenant short film collection.
Go check it out. Go listen to our Covenant episode too with friend of the show, Jade. Shout out
to
Jade.
Episode.
Listen to all of our episodes. They're all good.
You should listen to them on repeat forever.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm done saying that little interruption. You can continue where you left off.
Sure. So we know humans have DNA in common with engineers. We know that at least through David's experiments with Shaw's body in Covenant, at least his version of the xenomorph/ovomorph has human DNA in it. And the implication seemed to be that he might have been filling in the gap because he didn't have enough untainted engineer DNA to work with. Who really knows, right? But again, human DNA and engineer DNA share something. All right. We learn in this book that Cruz sees the woman in the dark, the goddess, when he's face-hugged. We also see Mitch say the same thing. In Icarus, I am convinced now that we see the birth of, quote-unquote, maybe not the goddess, but a goddess, right?
Right.
That was the character Lee, who survived a pathogen infection and became a hybrid. Remember, she was bitten by a bug that had been part of an experiment on Tobler 9, and that experiment room was full of empty pathogen jars, implying that these were pathogen experiments. So because there's something present in human DNA that's also present in engineer DNA and can be present in xenomorph DNA, at least with the XX121 variation and with the one that we saw David create, and because there's some kind of a link that we still don't fully understand between the xenomorph and the pathogen, I think once a face hugger and a human come in contact with each other, it's essentially creating like a temporary version of that genetic combination. The genetic combination of all of these things coming together to create something like the goddess, right?
All right.
Just like in a split second, it's just a feeling. It's not like a premonition. I don't think that Cruz or any of these people are literally seeing Lee from Icarus or literally seeing a different goddess that exists. They're just seeing the possibilities of all of these combinations. That's why Cruz was seeing other species and maybe the species that created the species that infected him, etc. I think it's taking just like all of the DNA, like all of these like recessive genes or whatever that are in all of us, and it's just like in a flash, like making everything sort of mixed together and showing a possibility, right? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm following what you're saying. Yes.
So all that to say, I think that what we see with Lee in Icarus is the end result that is hinted at by Iris in this, but I don't think it is the literal exact same figure that Cruz is seeing, because I don't think Cruz or Mitch or any of the other characters are literally seeing an actual being that exists. They're seeing a possibility of if all of this different DNA, all of these different genetic parts actually permanently mixed together, that's the end result. You either burn up or you become the mutant, right? Mm-hmm. So this got me thinking a little bit about what we saw in Fire and Stone. And I think that this, even though that's a different universe, I think it leads some credence to this. Because remember, Francis Lane, I forget what his role was but he had cancer, right? He was the character in Prometheus, Fire and Stone who had cancer and had like the friendship with Eldon. And they came across who was the synth, and they came across the pathogen. And Francis had this theory that the pathogen was just too volatile, but if he could filter it through something else, it might be effective in curing him and making him stronger, which again is an idea that she's leaning into. Like eventually you guys will try to use this stuff to make yourselves stronger. But he was like, I need to purify it first. So if I run it through Eldon's synthetic system, it might just like make it easier for me to take. And he didn't get that far because it just drove Eldon insane. And I'm pretty sure Eldon like squished his head or something.
Yeah, it fucking mutated him, yeah.
Yeah. That's similar to what happened to Lee, in the reason that she survived being exposed to the pathogen was because it had been filtered through a bug, and that bug had then bitten her. So it was just like the smallest amount of like exposure, and it was still enough to like completely mutate her entire form, but it didn't kill her the way we had seen like other people who get exposed to pathogen or larger creatures, like the way that they have broken down, like in Prometheus or in Covenant, you know. And the thing that doesn't totally add up for me is the spores in Covenant.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just something different going on there that I don't understand. Anyway, all of this to say, yeah, I am convinced that what we see in Icarus, what we end with in Icarus, that panel, is a goddess, and it is exactly what Iris was predicting here, is exactly what Iris is laying out for them of what it is. It is the inevitable end result of all the experimenting that you guys are doing on pathogen, on xenomorphs, combining all this shit together, trying to harness it, weaponize it, utilize it. You're just going to succumb to it in the end, and you're going to become a part of the cleansing fire, right? Because we saw that too. We saw that in Fire and Stone with Eldon. Suddenly he could like command xenomorphs, right? And we saw that with Lee. Suddenly she could like command she was like one with the xenomorphs. So eventually we just succumb and become a part of the entire thing. Those are my thoughts on the goddess.
I want to issue a correction on my part. You were correct when you said that information that David left behind and sent to the company.
Yeah.
Now that I'm looking at the list of short films, yeah, you are correct. It was not from Last Signs of Life. I believe it was actually from Covenant Epilogue Advent.
Okay. Also on that same episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, all of them are on that one episode. So if you listen to episode 10 of Crew Expendable, wink, 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 nudge, nudge, you'll hear it regardless. But yes, I believe I was wrong. I'm pretty sure you were correct in calling me out that it was not Last Signs of Life. I believe it was Advent that actually happened.
Okay. So, Kenny, I think I got a little messy at the end there, but basically, to sum up my point, Icarus is linked to this in this premonition or this concept playing out. What do you think? Does that change the way you view the goddess at all? Do you still think it's really dumb and stupid? Or
I mean, here's the thing.
I wasn't trying to win you over, to be clear. I want your honest opinion. You know?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, putting like what you did was put it more firmly in the context of like, tying it in more to like the alien lore. And like,
Right.
basically you went out of your way to try to figure out a way to make it make sense.
Mhm.
And it's like, that does not change my opinion on the concept of like, because my problem with the goddess, the reason I think it's dumb is
Right.
because I don't think that's like a story that needs to be told, like in the sense of like us, being told, oh, if you fuck with this stuff, look what happens to you. Like, to me, the story of Xenomorph is somebody running into these aliens and then getting fucked up. Like,
Sure.
I don't need to know all about like, premonitions and like
Yeah.
how these guys are like genetically intertwined with you in the future. And like, just like how, going back to our episodes on Outbreak, I believe I went out of my way to like, I believe I specifically said in those episodes that like the stuff about like, having dreams of like premonitions and like the psychic powers and stuff,
Right.
that part of the comic didn't really work for me.
Okay.
And like this whole thing about like, the goddess and how she's like, the theoretical end result of you guys fucking around with the fucking black goo.
Mhm.
Like, to me, that feels of a piece of the psychic powers in Outbreak to me, like in the sense of
It's not
like,
what
it's
you're
a
here
thing
for.
that, yeah, it's like it's a thing that you're not supposed to know, but you're like mystically able to figure out because of the xenomorphs. And it's like, that's not an aspect of xenomorphing that I care about or want to hear about. Like, I don't, that part is, like you said, it's not what I'm here for. It's not something that interests me. That's not like a path that I want xenomorph stories to go down. I want a big gross monster murdering people.
Right.
I don't want to muck it up with like psychic powers and dream visions and stuff. That is not stuff I fucking need.
Again,
And
man,
so,
not a dream vision, just a combining of genetics.
true, but like it's a dream vision in the sense of, while people have the face huggers on them and they're in a coma, they're having a vision of a theoretical but inevitable future, not of, like you said, they're not picturing a actual real physical thing that already exists right now. They're picturing something that will happen in the future, which is maybe not necessarily dream premonitions, but it's of a piece with that.
That's fine. It's they're
And-
seeing a specific genetic combination.
And so,
Because all
like,
of the parts are there at that moment. That's what I'm saying.
and so, like, how should I phrase this? You going out of your way to try to put it into like the greater context of what it's supposed to mean and how it's supposed to work, and especially coming up with I don't want to say an excuse, but a reason, I guess, for it to happen that's more grounded in like the biology of how we are aware that creatures in this universe works.
Right.
It feels less of a cop-out and something they pulled out of their ass. Like, now that you've framed it in that proper context, it feels less far afield to me than it used to be.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's still just, like I said, it's still just not a story I'm that interested in having be told to me
Right.
in an alien comic. Like, I mean, there's no amount of explaining that will get me to be like, oh, this is actually really cool. But there is an amount of explaining that I could be given that makes me go, okay, that makes sense. And that level of explaining is the level of explaining you just gave.
Okay.
So
Now, what I do want to say at the end of all of this is that this theory of mine, this interpretation of mine, heavily relies on the idea of fuck around with pathogen too much, you become a monster.
which, I mean, to be fair, is something that we have seen happen in previous comics.
Right.
So them saying, if you fuck around with this pathogen, look what happens. This is not the first comic to establish that. Like, this is like established alien universe lore.
Yeah,
you know?
but I don't like that though. Like, I much
That's
prefer
true.
Xenomorph being independent. Like my headcanon, I'll call it headcanon because I don't think it's been confirmed, but I don't think there's anything that directly opposes it except maybe this theory. My theory is the engineers found the xenomorphs and then successfully weaponized the xenomorph into the pathogen, right? Maybe just specifically focusing on like the DNA reflex aspect. They were somehow able to turn that into an element that they could use to like destroy and rebuild, you know?
So what you're picturing is that the engineers invented like a gigantic Cuisinart and then like tossed an alien into it and hit puree,
right?
And then pathogen came out. Okay, I get you. That's fair. That's fair.
And then David's experiments were him reverse engineering a xenomorph from
out of the pathogen.
Exactly.
I got you. Okay. All right.
That's what I like to think. And listen, if the real answers are out there, we're going to get some emails, we're going to get some YouTube comments, we're going to get some DMs, some tweets. That's fine. You can show them to us.
Yeah, but now is a good point to say, all you listeners out there, me and Neal both prefer the idea of xenomorphs just being a thing that's already out there.
Just being a scary, evil thing that's out there.
Yeah, they're just a monster that's out there that already exists. They don't come from somewhere like Metroids do. They weren't genetically engineered or designed or built or whatever. They're just a thing that's already there, and then sometimes people accidentally open the door and go, oh no.
Whoops, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, both of us prefer the explanation of there isn't one, they're just out there. That's like to both of us the one that works best.
It's scarier,
and all like a whole bunch of stories all keep coming up with these origin stories for him, and it's just like when you're watching, I mean, maybe this is a bad example for you, but like it's just like when you're watching the Halloween movies and they get into like the 5th one and the 6th one and they're like, let's come up with an origin story for this guy, and everyone's like, we do not need one.
Well, yeah, but the only reason that Halloween 6 works is because they attempt to do that, but it's just so incompetent, it makes no sense that it doesn't actually deliver on that. So
Halloween
you're just left
6
being confused. You
like
know?
Halloween 6 is an insane enough movie that I'm willing to forgive the fact that they tried to make it be an origin story. Like it is, but it is itself such a fucking insane movie that I'm willing to let it slide. But like you get my point. Like after a while, every long running horror franchise always tries to give an origin story to the bad guy, and every time they do, everyone's always like, do not do that, and then they do it anyway.
Yeah, it's why I'm kind of like twisted up about this Crystal Lake series that's supposed to be coming out. But I am gonna watch the fuck out of it because I'm a big. I'm also
gonna watch it.
I'm literally wearing a Friday the 13th shirt today, and I bought a Halloween shirt today.
All right. Well,
real quick. When I say, I've said it multiple times on the show, I don't want answers to everything. I don't want answers to everything, but I do want enough information kind of sprinkled around that I can like come up with theories and figure out what works best for me. And that's sort of what I was doing here with this. Like I want some open-ended, like I don't want to know the exact way the pathogen works, what came first, whatever. Like, don't ever give me that information, please. Whoever's in charge of Alien now.
Plus, there's no way for it to fully make sense because it's effectively magic, you know?
Right, sure. And like, but like, I don't want some shit to come out that like, oh, this is hard canon now. And it just I love picking and choosing and exploring all the different like versions of alien mythos, right? Like if we sat down and read the theory of alien propagation right now, which by the way, I'm going to pitch we do as an episode soon. Like there's going to be shit in there that doesn't make any sense compared to whatever we've seen from Prometheus, right? I mean, we're going to see space jockeys. You know what I mean?
We sure will.
We've seen them in other things already. So like, I don't know. I don't want hard answers still, but I want to be able to theorize about how this stuff works. That's just more interesting to me.
All right, listeners, I hope you're all sitting down and have your shoes off because your socks are about to fucking get knocked off as well.
Oh, fuck.
Because check this shit out. We're actually not even done with the issue yet. There's still more issue to go. So, rewind back like however long ago it was before we started to get into this. Cast your mind back and remember that all of this conversation happened because Bishop snapped Iris's neck, and then we found out Iris with a synth, and then Iris was like, all right, Cruz, check this shit out. All right.
Sure.
The next thing that happens after that is, you know, she goes on that big rant trying to explain about like Prometheus's cleansing fire and all that. And then Iris fucking dies. All right.
Iris gone.
Yeah. Iris dies.
If this was called Alien Iris, the story would be over right now.
That is correct. And luckily, though, there's not that much far left to go. Cruz manages to convince Bishop to attempt surgery on Danny.
Right.
And right as that happens, all you listeners out there, if you remember the character of Ted from the previous episode,
Ted Reynolds.
Ted Reynolds was Cruz's boss on Epsilon Station and also was a squad mate back in the day, i.e. the 20-year flashback period.
Yes.
He was the one that happened to call off sick the day that they went on the mission that everyone died in.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Go listen to our last episode if you haven't yet, even though I did a solid recap at the beginning of this one.
And Ted basically calls up, like, you know, gets on the comms and is like, look, we've been tracking your every move. We've been listening to everything you say. And here's the deal. Leave Danny alone and don't touch him or we kill you.
Right.
And Gabe basically goes, hey, check it. Fuck off.
Sure. Yeah.
And he says, leave Danny be or we'll kill you. And then he tries to kill them anyway by basically locking the ship controls so that they can't pilot it out.
Well, that's
and
what
the ship, I guess, I think he says it so that the ship will like burn up in the atmosphere or something like that.
Yeah, he threatens to do that. He's like, I can make it so your pod here can't leave. I can like lock you onto the ship, and then the whole thing is going to fall out of orbit and burn up on reentry and erase all the evidence. But if you're going to give me the fetus, which is our property, and the only reason you're still alive anyway, I'll let you leave, right? And
Cruz's response is basically, I already sacrificed one of my sons to you guys. I'm not doing both of them.
Right.
So you can basically get fucked. Peace out. Oh, also,
he says he's going to manually disable the remote locks, right?
And he's like, oh, and also, one last thing, while I still got you on the line, old buddy, old Ted, old pal. Way back in the day, when you just so happened to call in sick on that one mission where everyone died, and then Ted's like, and Gabe goes, you knew what was going to happen, didn't you? You weren't actually sick. You called off on purpose because you knew. And Ted's just like, ta-ta, and ends the call. And then the controls get locked up.
Right.
And Gabe's like, oh no. Fuck. And so, as you already said, he's going to go outside onto the outside of the ship in a spacesuit and like manually uncouple the ship so that they can just fly out.
He's lucky that there's an EVA suit with magnetic boots in this pod, and it doesn't look exactly like the maintenance jack from Alien Isolation, but he has a tool very similar to it. It's got a pry bar end instead of like the like bolt cutter end or the wrench end.
It's effectively a big wrench. It's not actually a wrench, but it's like, imagine what Dayton was using in Thaw. It's basically sort of like I said, it's not literally a big wrench.
Or imagine the big wrench from Alien Isolation.
Well, sure. Yeah. But like the reason I pointed out the comparison to Dayton is spoiler alert, listeners, when he goes out there to decouple the stuff, the fucking Alpha shows up.
And
then he pulls out that big wrench and uses it as a club to beat the thing, just like Dayton did at the end of Thaw.
He Dayton's the Alpha, right?
Yeah. He beats the shit out of it with this big wrench.
Can we talk a little bit about Alpha?
Sure.
So Alpha came out of Cruz, right?
Mm-hmm. It's the chest burster that got surgically removed from Cruise 20 years prior. Yes.
Is not a Xenomorph XX121, right?
I would say no.
But all of the other ones that we've seen have been, more or less, as
That
far
is
as we
correct,
know.
yes.
So what's the deal? I looked at the Xenopedia page for this, and they are implying on there, not implying, they pretty much directly say that he's a combination of like human gestation, but also those goats that were on the station, right?
Corcoran Highland goats. Yep.
Yeah, Corcoran Highland goats. Thank you very much. That's what they claim. But like, where's the evidence that he's any part goat? Is it just the horns on the head? Because
that's my guess. Yeah.
Because in Dayton's vision, he was seeing other aliens. What he claimed were the aliens that made the alien inside him, and they all had horns as well.
Yeah.
I don't know that those are from Corcoran Highland goats. I guess it could be a coincidence that they were, right? Because they had those just out on colonies for different things. Or do you think this was a situation where they pulled of course, they said 2 more minutes and he would have been dead when they pulled it out of him. So it's not like they pulled it out so prematurely. They then had to like put it in something else to survive, and it combined with the goats. I'm not sure on how Alpha looks like Alpha, you know?
Yeah, this part is kind of hazy and doesn't really work for me either. The implication is that I shouldn't say the implication. I should say how I read it, how I understood the event is that the face. No, that doesn't make any sense though either, because I was going to say the face hugger was like from a goat. Like face huggers don't come from the animals, they come from eggs.
Sure, but it could have come from a queen that was birthed from some quadrupedal, like far in, like, not, you know, weird space species, right?
Well, I will say, I assume, like, let's just say for the purposes of my example that that's correct, that the queen, you know, it did, like, you know, come from a queen that was birthed from whatever.
Here's an example we saw in Thaw, the gray face hugger.
Yeah.
Gave it, you know, put something different in you.
True. But like my point is like your theory of like, you know, maybe the queen was birthed from something, and so it's like, you know, eggs have something weird in it.
Right.
The implication that the comic gives is that weird thing the queen came from is a Corcoran Highland goat, because why else would the goats have been in the comic other than to establish how the Alpha came to look like that, you know?
Right. But my reading, we don't see any other ones with horns, but we see that some have burst out of those Corcoran Highland goats in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we don't have a bunch with horns running around, so it didn't come from them.
Well, I will point out that the goats only appeared in the 20 years prior flashback.
Oh,
which means, yeah.
Okay. Well, no, that explains it completely. I'm confused then. Are you sure that was in the flashback?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm rewinding. Let's just use the word rewinding.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Highland goats only appear in flashbacks.
Yeah,
because...
no, okay. No, you're 100% right. That's my mistake then. Okay. And that is definitely the species that they're dealing. That's why that species has horns.
Yeah, like
that's
the reason. That's the reason why the Highland goats are in the comic, is to explain why the Alpha looks like that. But that doesn't really make sense though, because like the face huggers on the Highland goats,
right?
Like they didn't give birth to the Alpha. A human host gave birth to the Alpha.
No,
so why does it have goat genetics when it was in a human and not a goat?
Okay, so now we're on to a different question. Yeah, because that would have had to imply that one of these that popped out of the goats was a queen that then laid face huggers. Well, yeah, I guess that's enough. That then face huggers.
Like the implication
would some of that
the
horn stuff still.
Yeah, the implication would be that a face hugger clamped onto a goat, like, you know, all those goats, and then one of those goats happened to be a queen, and so the queen had like the goat horns and then laid a bunch of eggs that had face huggers that would, I guess, produce horned ones.
Right.
But like that's the part that doesn't really make sense, because like the face hugger would latch onto you, but like it gets the DNA and like its birth form from the host creature, which in this case was a human. So why would it have horns?
It combines, right? So I think Gabe's vision,
right.
vision, where we saw the pile of tentacles and all the different horn Xenos that were like quadrupedal and like certain.
Those
ones with
were like
hooves.
the ones directly from the goat, and then the
yes.
alpha is the one that's been diluted further by human. Okay, now
diluted.
I get what you're saying. All right, now I get you.
That makes sense, and that would make sense why whatever eggs they got, whether Alpha laid an egg because he's the only xenomorph, or whether they just extracted DNA from it somehow and synthesized their own ovomorphs, why those could then be further diluted. You know, I mean, we saw them experimenting with all kinds of species, right, in those test tubes and things. That's what I think mixed me up, and I didn't realize the goats were only in the flashback. That makes total sense now. So it all tracks well enough. I don't have an issue with any of that anymore, and I can see how Alpha looks like Alpha.
So speaking of which, like I said, he shows up while Cruz is on the outside trying to decouple the ships.
Maybe Alpha is because it's got such a queen-like head. Maybe Alpha actually is a queen, right?
I mean, maybe, but like that's literally just like pure postulation and invention on our part.
Maybe
the comic only ever refers to it as an alpha, so I am forced to assume that they are inventing a new cast of alien, as in cast with an E on the end, new cast of alien for this thing to be that previously did not exist. Because like I have to assume that if it was a queen, it would have been referred to as a queen at some point, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's fair. They don't really tell us.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really see a queen like either way in this comic, unless, of course, the alpha is the queen. But like we have there's nothing in the comic that would actually give us evidence to think that it is. We're merely saying right now that it is just because it would make sense and it's possible, but nothing in the book points towards that being the case. So who knows?
Maybe it's an egg morphing situation. Okay.
Like, yeah, as far as I know, we never see a queen in the book. But like I said, the alpha shows up and attacks Cruz while he's outside of the ship trying to decouple the stuff. And the two of them get into a fight.
Right.
And he beats the shit out of the alpha with the big wrench while the alpha's cutting the shit out of him.
Yes.
And he manages to kill the alpha because the two of them like get removed, like they come off of the ship.
Sure.
And drift into space, and the two of them are still fighting each other while they pass into the atmosphere, and both of them get burnt up in the atmosphere.
You guys see Jason X, right?
And
Jason X, Uber Jason, and Sergeant Brodsky, right?
And with that, R.I.P. the Alpha and Gabriel Cruz.
Yeah.
Both of them are dead as hell.
Get fucked, Cruz. Sorry.
And then
they do another thing where he's like, I thought I would see her again, the goddess, right? The one in the darkness. But no, I see an old family photo that I haven't seen in years. Everyone looking happy and beautiful, makes it all worth it.
Yeah, he gets one moment of peace and serenity and seeing his family before he fucking dies.
Get fucked, Cruz.
And then it cuts to hours later. We see a brief POV shot of Danny waking up from surgery, and he's all like wrapped up, and he looks over and there's like a dead chest burster lying there.
A small looking one too, like smaller than his hand,
We find out, of course, that the surgery was a success, and Bishop says that they're on their way to landing. It's just going to be like a couple hours until they get there or whatever. And, to basically kick back and rest and relax. And then you think everything is fine until the last couple panels of the comic. While Danny is lying there, the cat walks up and looks at him. And then there's tight zoom. There's a tight zoom on the cat's face. And you see the face hugger marks around its mouth.
Damn.
And then it says, end chapter 1.
Yeah, man. The cat's got one in it. Maybe. We don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I assume that's followed up on because it says end chapter 1, indicating that the next arc is chapter 2 and a follow-up to this. So I don't know if they ever actually follow up on the plot line of the cat had a face hugger. Like, I don't know if that comes back in the next arc revival.
I don't remember. But interesting note. First, the cat has the number 13 on its collar.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can see facehugger scars on Danny's face. It's pretty slick looking there. That's all. Those are interesting notes. Right. Bishop's asking Danny what he sees, what he saw in his dreams. Cause Danny said, like, I saw my dad. Was it real? And he's like, yeah, your dad saved us. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danny's like, you're that synth that saved dad once. And he's like, actually, that was a different Bishop. Right. Mm-hmm. And then Bishop's like, what else do you see in your dreams? And he's like, I just remember the smell, this horrible, ungodly stink, and the deepest dark I've ever seen. And he said there was something in the dark looking for him, something far, far away. And we see the cat. Mm-hmm. That sucks, dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's how the comic ends. I don't know what to tell you.
How would it take a smaller face hugger to be able to face hug a cat? Like, how does it even work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I understand that, like, from a biological, practical standpoint, face huggers would have to be able to latch onto stuff of any size.
Right.
But, like, when I actually see something not at least vaguely human sized get taken by like, the cat here, or like, the dog from Alien 3, it feels off to me, because I was like, that thing is big enough to literally cover its entire head.
Exactly.
How would it not just die?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. Like, I understand that, like I said, like, biologically speaking, like in the canon of Alien, from a biological standpoint, face huggers would have to be able to latch onto anything of any size.
Right.
But, like, practically speaking, that just doesn't really work as an explanation for me, because I was like, the thing, it's fighting against humans, Yeah. And so these things are designed to be scaled versus a human.
Right.
And so there's that little bit of a disconnect there that always made it feel kind of weird to me.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem, again, but I wonder if they can, like, produce a smaller one. Like, if they were in an environment where there was only small creatures, right? If they would be able to adapt to make smaller face huggers to be able to, like, propagate the species. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I will point out, it's always made me laugh that the old Aliens toy line that introduced, like, all of the new alien types,
the scorpion alien and
like,
the snake.
It always made me laugh, because I think there's one that's called, like, a mantis or something.
Yeah, I think you're
and
right.
Like, it's always made me laugh because that implies that it is a face hugger attached to a mantis,
right?
And then a chest burster came out of a mantis, and I was like, bro, those things are like 2 inches long.
They also made in that, yeah, I know, right? Because they also had, like, a snake alien, right? And
they did.
Like, that's a pretty small target too. But then the snake alien itself was gigantic, you know. So
it's one of those,
the mantis alien also large.
I have a feeling it's one of those things where they thought it was cool, and so they did it, and then didn't really spend a lot of time, like, working out how that would work,
Right. They didn't care.
Yeah, they didn't care.
They also made a queen face hugger, like a giant face hugger. Like, don't know, because that's the other side, right? You scale up.
Wait, the face hugger is the size of a queen?
Just larger. I don't know. Like,
okay.
Again, because if we got to scale down, you also got to scale up. Okay, so here is action figure for someone named O'Malley versus the queen face hugger. It's a face hugger the size of a man. Okay.
Oh yeah, it sure is. Yeah. It is bigger than he is. Yeah.
So, like, that's,
and it's like, I mean, I suppose it would make sense, because in that toy line they also had, like, a rhino one.
Yeah, I guess you need something to, like, be able to get
I guess
on an
it would
elephant.
need bigger one, because, like, these creatures have existed for, like, theoretically hundreds of thousands of years. They're not all going to be scaled to human size necessarily. They would have to have bigger and smaller ones to, support, like, other alien species.
Right. Damn, for only $75 I can own this.
That I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm not fucking no.
Well, I mean, you've made dumb purchases like that before, so.
Yeah. I got there's specific lines in my head that I won't cross.
All right. So, got anything else to say about this comic before we review it?
before we review it, no.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about or point out or bring up or call attention to or anything like that?
I don't think so. No. Just in terms of details, story details, anything like that. No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, then, Neal, what did you think of these 3 issues generally? And now that we finished the arc, the entire arc as a whole?
These 3 issues moved pretty good for me, and I liked them. I don't love it. I don't think this is great. I don't think this is fantastic alien comics. I think that this was a pretty, as a whole, I think it was an interesting introduction to the Marvel version of alien comics, right? I think it's pretty clear that it pulled some inspiration maybe from some Dark Horse stuff, like I was talking about with Prometheus, Fire and Stone a little bit. Just and trying to pull in the I guess that was more Icarus later, right? But it's all the same writer and universe. But I guess like trying to pull in like the pathogen aspect of it and reference Prometheus pretty directly. That's a bold move, you know, to do in your introductory story arc, to be like, no, we're gonna face the Prometheus of it all, right?
Yeah, the common knowledge, or not the common knowledge, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but basically the gist of the Alien franchise at this time was that they were, if not directly discanoning Prometheus and Covenant, they were at the very least distancing themselves from it. So yes, it is interesting for this to go out of its way to be like, I am pointing a big finger at Prometheus.
Yeah, and then obviously they do that again with Icarus. We saw that with books, right? With Inferno's Fall. We see it in Fire Team, you know, like they reversed that decision pretty quickly. I think they found a way to try to make it all work together, and I think that this was kind of a part of it. And first of all, I completely understand why this is not, you know, I don't think this is anybody's favorite Alien book, right? And I think a lot of people actively kind of dislike this, and I can totally see why. And I don't know that, like, now that we've like dug deep into this thing, this is my second time reading it, and I think we've gotten absolutely everything we're going to get out of this thing. That's a big part of why I wanted to put this goddess thing to rest and really like analyze it, was so that I could move on from this thing and not really have to think about it again. You know,
fair enough.
Like there are parts of it that I have mined this for all of the value I'm going to get out of it. And there are things in this story I'm going to carry forward as we look at other Alien stories, obviously, but this isn't something I'm going to revisit, like to sit down and read, you know. It's got value. I think it's got a lot of really good ideas. I think it's got some pretty good writing. I don't think it works as a whole. I think the art drags it down. I think the pacing sometimes drags it down, especially in those first 3 issues. Yeah, and they keep it from being like a really, really good book. So that's how I feel. I think there's value in this, and I think that once you've explored that, it's not something that you're going to go back and revisit like maybe I would with the Gibson Alien 3 comic or something.
I got you.
Yeah. What about you, Kenny? How do you feel about these back 3 issues and then the series as a whole?
Well, these back 3 issues, I think ultimately I like them more than the first 3 because, like you said, it's faster paced, it's actionier. There's more xenomorphs in it. I think the alpha looks really cool. And as I said earlier, the first time that I read this comic, I thought it was pretty mid.
Sure.
Going back and reading it again.
No cap.
That's right. We bussin', baby. Going back and reading this again.
Yeah.
Not just because I already read it, so I know what to expect, so I'm able to like get more into the details and all that stuff, but also I'm more familiar with the Alien franchise as a whole now than I was compared to when I read this comic the first time. And so it's easier for me to like put it into the proper context of like the stories that had been told before and like, you know, where it's pulling from and all that. And so I like this comic more the second read through than I did the first read through.
Same here. Yeah.
I think there's more here. I think the comic is better than I originally gave it credit for, but like you said, I do not think I'm ever going to read this comic again.
Yeah.
I purposely went out of my way to not bring it up on this issue, but the art is real bad, dog.
Yeah. Yeah. We went pretty hard last week.
Because like you said,
last episode.
because we went hard on it last episode, I went out of my way to not bring it up at all this time. But like now that we're reviewing it, like the art is not that good, and it's the big gripe for me about this book. And it's like, regardless of narratively what the book is doing and how interesting the story is, the art is just such a glaring misstep that it drags the entire book down with it. And it's like the humans just look so weird and so off, and so much shit is just fully out of proportion with itself. And it's like, the story, like I said, is more interesting than I originally gave it credit for. There's more going on there. There's more going on there than I thought. And the story does have interesting things to say. This ultimately, like, when I first read it, I was like, the story's fucking boring. It's just another fucking story about a dude going in with a gun fighting a xenomorph.
Yeah.
And it's like, now that I've read it again, no, there is more to it than that. There is enough to really chew on and get something out of. But no matter where you go, every time you look at the book, you're like, this art fucking stinks.
I do think that that's a part of that does drag down the goddess stuff a little bit, because I'm looking at this picture of her during Iris's monologue, right?
And she like, looks different than she did earlier in the book.
She looks different than she did earlier in the book. She's got like literally a snake head on top of her head. Like the scales have been drawn in and everything. And like I know we were just talking about a snake alien, and I know that these things have been like serpent-like. Like I've heard them, like xenomorphs, been referred to as serpents. They're a hybrid, you know.
Yeah.
They kind of defy clear definition, and that's what's so scary about them. But like,
I mean, to me, they were always more clearly insectoid, but like I understand the snake comparison.
Right. They hiss and they do. And again, I think it's part of that they exist in this weird, uncanny, like you can't define exactly what you're looking at accurately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm rewinding again. I say rewinding. I buy these on Comixology. I'm reading them on my computer, so I'm just paging back a million pages.
Yeah.
To see. There she is. Yeah. Yeah. She looks different in the first shot. She doesn't have a snake. Well, she does still have a snake on her head. It's just not as detailed. I guess she's pretty consistent with the design, but it doesn't look super duper xenomorphy, right?
It is not. It looks like a sexy babe.
And I think that kind of fucks up the delivery of the idea. I'm going to open up Icarus here and take a look at the last page of issue 6. I think the cover, very serpent-like, sexy-ish, whatever. Again, to each their own. Yeah, the final page, like this feels much more like a hybrid, human xenomorph hybrid, the one at the end of Icarus.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned this before. Like, I don't think we've seen the creature finish evolving, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the art really drags this down. I think it works a little better in this half because there's so much action, and as I was saying at the beginning, the color work does a lot of heavy lifting on those action panels.
Yeah.
But yeah, the art really does keep this thing from being. I think this would be like, I'm gonna give this. Man, I did mine a lot of value out of this. I'm gonna give it a 5.5 out of 10. Okay.
All right.
But I think with a different artist, this could have been a 7.
I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with your specific numerical ratings,
right?
But I will agree that if this book was exactly the same but had a different artist, like was otherwise identical, its rating would be way higher just based on that alone. Because it's like no matter how good of a story they tell, the visuals just drag the whole thing down. I mean, I kind of like how we've just spontaneously started giving things numerical ratings. I don't think we started doing that until like last episode or something like that.
We started doing it with this book specifically, I think.
And I don't know why, but I kind of like it. I don't know if I want to keep doing it, but I'm okay with doing it now.
I mean, this one, like, we want to be clear. Like, I don't think this is a great read, but I think that there's a lot of stuff you can get out of it if you do sit down and read it. There's a lot of interesting stuff contained, but the journey is rocky, right?
Yeah. This will be my rating for it. I'm going to ultimately give this book a 6 out of 10, but with the caveat that it is a do not recommend.
Yeah.
That being said, if you do read it, you will get stuff out of it. But this is like a book where it's like alien diehards only go here.
Right.
You know?
And here's the thing. You will get stuff out of it, but even the goddess connection to Icarus, a storyline that we both very much enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Even that stands on its own, and it only gets tied back to this because we had prior knowledge of reading this, right?
If you read this first before going into the other ones, the goddess won't fucking mean anything to you.
Right. Yeah. Like you could read Icarus and not read Bloodlines and have a great experience and just take the Lee transformation for what it was in that book, and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
You can read Thaw, and you can see folders marked Project Alpha, and you don't have to know what Project Alpha is because it doesn't have any bearing on that story either, except that you know it's Weyland-Yutani experimenting with xenomorphs. That's all you need to know. Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that this is a do not recommend. I don't think that Bloodlines is the book you hand someone when they're like, hey, I want to read an alien story.
Speaking of which, after our previous episode, I mentioned that one of the hosts of The Flock said that he started reading Bloodlines and then dipped out after an episode or two, or after an issue or two. I said I wasn't sure which one it was. Bob confirmed that it was, in fact, him that happened to. It was specifically Bob, yes.
Yeah.
So Bob, going back to what we said, you're not missing much if you do not continue to read the comic, but definitely read the other arcs. They're all way better than this one.
Yeah, definitely Icarus is better. Thaw is a book that I would recommend to somebody who's like, hey, give me an alien story to read. I'd hand them Thaw right away.
I would hand them Icarus or Thaw, either one. Like, they're both great.
I don't know if I'd hand them Revival, but we're gonna find out, because up next, Alien Revival,
which for listeners that have been paying attention, I said in the previous episode I hadn't read yet. Well, update, as of this recording, I still have not read it.
Kenny,
because I knew we were going to be recording it next, so I decided to save it for the recording.
I have a logistics question for you. Now, we covered Bloodlines 3 issues at a time, so 2 episodes. Do you feel like it was a little dense? I mean, we're looking at 2 hours specifically recording time talking about the contents of Bloodlines on this episode.
Yeah,
should we split? Should we do Revival in 2s as opposed to 3s?
I don't think we'll need to, because a big part of the reason why this episode is so long is because we argued about that broken medpod for like 10 minutes. And then we went on a rant about the goddess for like 20 minutes.
All right. Okay. We'll stick to doing it in 3s then.
So we probably, like, this episode's only long because we added a whole bunch of stuff to it. So we probably don't need to split it into 2s.
No one out there's upset that we're giving them more ice cream too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Right. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed us arguing about a med pod. That was that was real dumb on our parts.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't care. There was a point where I was like, maybe I should ask him to cut this out after we're done. And then I was like, you know what? I don't care.
I think I'm making 3 edits to this, and one of them is a time I coughed. So it's all staying in, baby.
That's fine. I don't care. I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where, like, I stand by it. The reason why I was like, maybe we should cut it out is because, as we even agreed, it does not matter at all.
Right.
But it's fine. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap this up because it is a school night.
I cannot express to you how much I do not have anything else to say about this comic. I mean, I have been talking about it for what, 4.5 hours now or something like that. I got nothing else to say.
Yeah, and we probably don't have anything else to say about it either. I don't know how directly, if at all, the next story arc ties into anything that happened in Bloodlines, but we'll find out.
Yeah, because you don't remember and I haven't read it. So for all I know, it might not have anything to do with the events of Bloodlines. So
I do think we're in for a treat. I remember the story being interesting.
I remember hearing that it got better reviews than Bloodlines, because I do remember after Bloodlines came out, everyone was like, eh.
Yeah, even, I mean, it is. The art is so much better that I didn't realize it was Salvador LaRocca art. I was thinking it was a different artist for a very long time there, if you remember. So
then Revival is Philip Kennedy Johnson and Salvador LaRocca then?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, let's get the fuck out of here. Kenny, what do you got going on? Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm not on Instagram. I am on Facebook, but I don't use my online handle for it because it's Facebook. Most social media platforms or whatever you can find me on. Anyone that you want to see if I'm there, just go and search for it. If I have an account there, it'll pop up. You can search for me under the name at CYHOBBEZ.
You can find me on Instagram at Final Neal Retro, Blue Sky at Final Neal. Check out my other podcast all about Mortal Kombat stuff, mkpodquest.com, mkpodquest in your podcast app. That show will be wrapping up, but we got a handful of episodes still coming out and a huge backlog. If you like Mortal Kombat movies, TV shows, comic books, novels, anything but the video games, go check it out. Kenny, where can people find this show on the internet?
As we mentioned, I believe 3 times in a row earlier on in the episode, our email address is mother@crewexpendable.net. Because our website is crewexpendable.net. Our Twitter handle is at crewexpendapod, and our Instagram handle is at Crew Expendable Pod. We have a YouTube that is youtube.com/@crewexpendable. And once I get around to doing it, you'll probably find us on Blue Sky as well. I'll be able to tell you, I have a couple of invite codes so I can do it. I just have to remember to do it. I will update you guys on what the Blue Sky handle for the show is when I do it.
Kenny, do it now so we can get at Crew Expendable. Do it now.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks to everyone who reaches out. Nice words, good reviews, corrections, all of that stuff. We love it. We love all of the interaction. Yeah, thanks, everyone, for checking out the show. We're going to be back next episode to talk about issues 1 through 3 of Alien Revival, which are also issues 7 through 9 of Marvel's Alien Volume 1. It's very confusing. Alien Revival. All right, guys.
The first 3 issues of it.
Until then,
stay frosty.